Forge is a new game from the indie company Dark Vale Games, after a sadly failed Kickstarter where they fell about $220,000 short. They luckily got their game greenlit on Steam Greenlight. Now that it recently released, the question remains if it is worth the $20 price tag, or if instead Forge has fallen victim to the dreaded unfinished Steam Greenlight syndrome that some seem to suffer from. First things first, this rather pretty looking game with impressive graphical quality is a multiplayer only game, so don't expect any intriguing or otherwise engaging storyline and single player mode. No, Forge is here for the raw and pure multiplayer combat fest. They've been marketing Forge as having MMORPG combat, but I don't think that does it proper credit. For instance, I can't name a lot of MMOs where you can rocket jump all over the place in a glorious fiery explosion. And indeed, vertical movement is a big deal in Forge, with the ability to wall jump, and almost every class has a movement ability of the sort. Forge currently features 5 classes that do feel very distinct, and for the most part seem to have been balanced well. Whether you prefer the close-up backstabby action of the assassin, like to set people on fire as the pyromancer, or instead are a bit more of a kind spirit and want to fill the crucial role of healer, is up to you. With a mix of MMO and FPS combat, positioning becomes key in Forge. Every ranged attack is a skill shot, that is to say you need to aim with it, though it mostly seems to be hit scanning, which does allow for the meat shield, I mean respected tankier classes, to absorb a lot of ranged fire, simply by standing in the way. In addition, almost every ranged attack seems to have unlimited range, meaning that as long as you got line of sight on an enemy, you can potentially hit them. As a result, a lot of 1 vs 1 duels do feel rather intense and are for a large part about chaining up the right abilities and hiding behind walls or other places when necessary. Not to mention little details such as mana control, as blocking, jumping, using abilities all cost mana or energy. That being said, Forge has a large focus on group combat, and without a well-mixed bag of classes, your chances are diminished tremendously. The combat itself feels well done. It's quick, it's for the most part fluid, and aiming, using abilities or navigating yourself across the map tends to go rather smoothly. It does have a bit of a steep learning curve, mainly due to the fact that there is little information on what is actually going on at the start. Once you get the hang of things, this isn't a big issue for just combat, but it would be nice if there was a bit more meat behind an arrow hit or a dagger attack. Sadly, this is not the only part where the game doesn't seem to properly inform you on. A lot of abilities simply aren't properly explained. Take for instance the Shaman. As a Shaman you can cast a giant shield around you, which supposedly protects all allies within it for a limited amount of time. But what protection are we talking about here? Complete immunity? Just protection from fire or physical damage? How much damage? How long is this limited amount of time? It's seemingly simple details like these that are left out on a lot of abilities. Then finally, there currently seems to be 3 sets of game modes. A capture the hill like mode, where your team must get to the yellow semi-transparent towers first in order to drain the enemy of points. A deathmatch which, well, is really pretty self-explanatory, kill every enemy you see. And finally, a relic hunting mode, which apparently also has towers that do something, but mainly is about capturing items from the other team's base and bringing it back to your own. These towers in relic mode seem to increase the points you get from capturing one such relic, but this, again, isn't explained in-game. You can only really judge the game on its combat, because if you're looking for more, it simply isn't there. It boasts about character customization, and the groundwork for this seems to be there, but just isn't properly implemented yet, with a lot of unlocks doing nothing at all at the moment. But this is not the only implementation that isn't properly finished yet. The game in general just feels like it's very much still in a beta phase. You currently can't make guilds or simply group up with friends. You can't even pick anything but the random playlist right now. If you just want to do deathmatch, you're in tough luck because you can't. If you want someone to join you in a match, they can only do so in the hope your server isn't full yet, as they enter your username in an attempt to find where you are at. All of this means that the gameplay in Forge is very limited. You can join a game. This will randomly switch between the very limited, feeling rather the same 3 different game modes, and that is that. The combat is definitely a lot of fun, and especially if you manage to get into a game with a friend or two, it is a good multiplayer experience, just don't expect a lot of variety from it. Sadly, I have to conclude that the game got out way too early. It feels and really is nothing more yet than a beta experience, unfit for release. There's a ton of promise here, and indeed they are actually promising to add a lot of features in the nearby future. New classes, new abilities that you can customize your class loadout with, and the ability to actually select playlists. Those are all features that would make this game a ton better, but they aren't there as of yet. The combat is all you will be getting right now, and it is highly enjoyable, so the question of whether or not you should get the game comes down to purely that. I can't genuinely recommend picking up this game as it is right now, and I would suggest waiting until they actually patch in those core features they are promising. In short, the game has great combat and a ton of promise, but that promise remains to be seen.